Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to talk about continuity in government. This is important because if something severe happens in our country that causes one of our elected leaders to not be in public office anymore, we need to know the provisions for replacing them. When something happens to the president, there are constitutional guidelines for replacing the president, but the Constitution does not cover other important details. What happens when representatives and senators are unable to finish their terms? What if the president is unable to complete their term and does not realize it? What happens to a new president if the outgoing president leaves a mess just before leaving office? We need to see what provisions or actions exist to keep our government operating. For this video, we will start with members of Congress. The framers needed to think about representatives who lived farther away from Washington, D.C. They felt if the representatives could not show up as often, the ones who lived closer might take advantage and business could not be conducted. The framers wanted to make it required that a quorum of the House and Senate be present, where a majority is 1/2 of the members plus one more. However, other framers wondered what would happen if a representative resigned for some reason or if a senator died in office. The framers said, quote, "The House of Representatives is the people's branch. Representatives must always be elected by the constituents, even if it takes a special election. No congressman should ever be appointed in any circumstance. State legislatures appoint senators. So why not just have the legislatures replace absent senators while they are in session? And if they are in recess, the governor can name new senators. They have lots of responsibilities, so those seats can't remain vacant for too long," unquote. Eventually, some problems came up with the system of state legislatures appointing senators. If they could not agree on whom to appoint, someone will pay the representatives to get into a seat. And since folks, especially out west, wanted to pick their senators instead of relying on state legislatures to do so, many states started holding straw elections in which Senate candidates could compete with one another. Public pressure grew to strip state legislatures of the power to appoint senators. Between 1893 and 1908, 2/3 of the House approved an amendment that called for direct election of senators by the people. Every proposal died in the Senate. The situation finally got the senators' attention in 1912 when people were calling for a second constitutional convention. 27 states petitioned for this. If another 4 states joined them, a second convention would have happened. However, a new amendment would be drafted. With the ratification of the 17th Amendment in 1913, arrangements changed. Instead of being picked by state legislatures, senators could be elected directly by the people. It also changed the way senators would be replaced. It states, quote, "When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as the legislature may direct," unquote. With rare exceptions, states always have senators representing them, whether elected or appointed by governors. They do not necessarily have a full delegation of representatives, however, if there is a lag between a congressperson's departure and the election of a new one. So, are there still any issues with maintaining continuity in government? Well, let's take a look at the process of replacing a member of Congress. For representatives, calling for a special election might seem simple enough, but such elections have to follow procedures which vary from state to state. First, the election has to be scheduled that follows state law. Then, both major political parties and smaller third parties, if there are any, need to find people who want to run, raise money, give candidates a chance to campaign, hold primary elections, caucuses, or conventions to reduce the number of candidates to 1 per party, hold a runoff primary if no one wins enough votes, encourage voters to get to the polls, and finally hold the election. This process can take as little as 2 months or up to 6 months. The missing representative staff members can carry out some jobs, but no one else can hold committee hearings or vote on bills. That means the constituents back home are literally unrepresented. The constitutional process to replace a senator can take even longer since the election is statewide, not just within a single congressional district. In 36 states, governors are allowed to appoint an interim senator, which can occur overnight. senators can keep that post until the next regular election, but some states have limits, like requiring that the successor be from the same party as a former senator. In 14 states, a special election is required to fill the empty Senate seat. In 9 of those, the governor can name an interim appointee, but 5 states require waiting for the special election. If members of Congress have to be elected and not appointed, then that seat remains vacant until then. Essentially, the time to replace a representative in the middle of a term can take a while, and each state's rules on replacing a representative varies too. No matter what, the longer it takes to get a replacement, the longer people in a district and/or state will be without someone speaking on behalf of them in Congress and not voting on legislation in their interests. Legislative progress can be static in a district or state until there is someone who can be a new representative or senator. Many senators and representatives have died in office and some have been expelled. But besides death and expulsion, elected officials also leave Congress for other reasons. Then Senators John F. Kennedy and Barack Obama moved into the White House as president. Then Senators Hillary Rodham Clinton and John Kerry became Secretaries of State under President Obama, and several other senators also joined his administration. President Donald J. Trump named Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions to serve as Attorney General, Kansas Representative Mike Pompeo to head the Central Intelligence Agency, Montana Representative Ryan Zinke to be Secretary of the Interior, and Georgia Representative Tom Price to head the Department of Health and Human Services. If you follow American politics, at least a few of these names would sound familiar to you. I bring all these people up to show you how they used to be members of Congress before getting offered roles in presidential administrations. Let's talk about the drawbacks to the requirement for a quorum. For one, the Constitution is vague about what quorum means. Furthermore, to pass a law, you need a majority of the quorum to do it. How does that work? Congress is composed of 100 senators and 435 representatives. If a majority of each means a majority of each body, here's a possible scenario. If 50 senators or 218 representatives are alive but unable to appear on the floor for a vote because of a disaster, there will not be enough people to make a quorum. In that case, Congress would not have enough members to pass legislation. The government would come to a standstill. But if a majority of each means a majority of those Congress people who remain alive and are able to get to work, the scenario is entirely different. If, say, 39 senators and 199 representatives can show up after a calamity, a quorum would be 20 senators plus 100 representatives. And a majority of that quorum, that is 11 senators and 51 representatives, could pass or defeat laws for the entire country. So clarifying the rules on a quorum is important for making sure that legislative actions do not stop simply because there is not a specific number of congressional members in the chambers. Here's another question. What about a doomsday scenario? If only 3 representatives in the House emerge from a catastrophe, then 2 of them could pass whatever bill they want. And if there are survivors, but they are injured, intellectually impaired, or comatose, replacements cannot be appointed. These people would keep their seats until they voluntarily leave office. During each State of the Union address, almost all chief figures in the federal government assemble at the Capitol. One cabinet member, the designated survivor, is ordered not to attend so that someone can step into the presidency should disaster strike. But they would not be able to accomplish much with no other elected or appointed officials to carry out their jobs. This is important to keep in mind because the way our government system does not allow presidents to pass legislation without having to go through Congress. Now, when we look at how other government systems handle continuity, here are some basic provisions they have in place. In California, the governor is required to call for an election to fill a legislative vacancy immediately, but that does not address a potential wholesale loss of members. The French and South African constitutions authorize national legislation to provide ways to fill vacancies, but these legislatures have never passed appropriate laws. In the US, the Constitution would have to be amended to change procedures for filling vacancies. From the end of World War II in 1945 through the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 and through the Cold War, many Americans were terrified that the Soviet Union might detonate nuclear weapons in Washington, D.C. During that time, Congress proposed more than 30 constitutional amendments that laid out ways to fill seats quickly in the House. Most of these allowed governors to make interim appointments. 3 proposals passed the Senate by wide margins. The House, however, did not take action on any possible measures to replace itself. After 9/11, nearly a dozen additional amendments were introduced to resolve issues of continuity in government. No plan was adopted. The House of Representatives did pass a bill that would require expedited elections in case more than 100 members are killed, but the bill did not address disabled members, nor did it move through the Senate. Other suggestions have included interim appointments by governors or by legislators. Details in various proposals, such as the number of deceased officials would trigger replacement and the length of time the replacements would serve, are all at odds with one another. In conclusion, continuity in government is essential to maintaining stability and representation in the United States, especially during times of crisis or sudden vacancies. While the Constitution provides guidelines for replacing the president, the process for filling vacancies in Congress is more complex and inconsistent across states. Some states allow temporary appointments of senators, and others require lengthy special elections of both representatives and senators. These delays can leave constituents without a voice in Congress and stall legislative progress that aligns with their district or state's interests. Other issues occur, such as knowing how to correctly fulfill a majority of a quorum, and if a catastrophic scenario leaves large numbers of legislators unable to serve. Although many proposals have been made, especially during times of heightened national security concerns, no lasting solution has been adopted to ensure Congress would be rapidly and fairly restored in the event of many vacancies. Our Constitution needs to provide enough specific guidance when different emergencies interfere with the continuity of government. This is so constituents are being represented by someone in Congress, legislative progress is still being made, and our country does not become static. In the next video, we will continue to talk about continuity in government by looking at presidential succession. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and turn on the post notifications so you will be notified when I post my next video. I appreciate your support. Remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you are the changemaker our society needs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon.